Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Olivia. I make content about veganism and animal rights activism. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the Grand National. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Grand National is the final race of a 3-day horse racing festival in the UK called the Aintree Festival. The Grand National is arguably one of the most challenging jump races in the world, and this is because 40 horses run the race at the same time, and there are 16 different obstacles that the horses have to jump over. And if that sounds dangerous, that's because it is. In fact, 62 horses have died at the Aintree Festival since the year 2000, of which 16 of those died in the Grand National race. Another thing to note is that the Grand National is a very popular event, and it generates a lot of money for a lot of people. So this year, unfortunately, 3 horses died, of which one of those, a horse named Hill 16, died actually in the Grand National race. What happened was Hill 16 fell over the first fence, he broke his neck, and then he was euthanized. And because of the number of horses that fell, as well as just generally the difficulty of the course, only 17 of the 39 competitors actually finished the race. So this year at the Grand National, there were campaigners from a group named Animal Rising. These are animal rights activists. They were there to try and raise awareness and campaign to end this exploitative and abusive industry. In total, 118 of the activists got arrested, but some of them did actually manage to get onto the course. And because of this, the Grand National race started 14 minutes late. So one article I found is from the BBC, and it's titled Grand National 2023, Trainer Blames Delays Caused by Protestors for Horse Death. So this article and the attached video are focusing on the views of a man named Sandy Thomson. Sandy Thomson is a horse trainer, and he was actually the person who trained Hill 16, which was the horse who died this year.
If we look at the last 9 years since the course has been modified, there's been an average of under 2 fallers at the first 2 fences. And this year, everybody got very uptight about it. Horses, jockeys, starter. There was 8 fallers at those first 2 fences. So those figures alone make it point to the fact that everybody just got very uptight and very upsettled. And this was all caused by these so-called animal lovers who actually are ignorant and have absolutely no idea about welfare of horses.
The animal rights protesters did not kill this horse. Hill 16 died because he was forced to run at insanely high speeds, jump over highly dangerous obstacles with 40 other animals on the course at the same time. A course which we know is lethal because 2 other horses died on the very same course just last year. If anyone is to blame for this horse's death, then we should be looking to people like Sandy himself, the sponsors, the people who are betting, the spectators, all of the trainers and the jockeys. The collection of these people, they facilitate this industry. They keep this exploitation and this abuse, they keep this happening year upon year. It's people like Sandy who force these animals into the start gates.
And this was all caused by these so-called animal lovers who actually are ignorant and have absolutely no idea about welfare of horses.
So these so-called animal lovers that Sandy claims are responsible for the death of Hill 16 are trying to campaign to end this lethal and abusive industry from happening in the first place. And then Sandy goes on to say that these animal rights activists have no idea about animal welfare. Thoroughbred horses today have been selectively bred to be extremely light, but also extremely fast. So these horses have huge muscles, but also very light bones, meaning that they have become faster, but they've also become much more fragile. Ex-race horses often have extensive lists of injuries, including fractures, broken bones, and according to Animal Aid, up to 75% of racehorses suffer from bleeding lungs, and a further 93% suffer from gastric ulcers. The bottom line is this: the modern thoroughbred racehorse would simply not exist today without human intervention. These animals are ticking time bombs for extensive and painful injuries. And then this man, Sandy, has the audacity to say that it's the animal rights protesters that have no idea about animal welfare, when Sandy himself is part of the system that forces these injury-prone and genetically manipulated animals to run at breakneck speeds. This is a complete disregard for any sort of animal welfare. If Sandy were really concerned with the welfare of horses, he wouldn't be part of this industry that causes them so much suffering and pain in the first place. Then later on in the article, Sandy makes this statement. He says, "Nobody wants that to happen to their horse, but that is what they are bred to do, what they love doing. They wouldn't jump these fences if they didn't want to." It is absolutely disgraceful for this man to suggest that horses somehow love racing. Horses are naturally herd animals. They enjoy forming large groups, travelling and grazing. And to suggest that horses somehow love carrying a human being on their back whilst being whipped to run at extremely fast speeds is completely disingenuous. When race horses are young, they go through a long process called being broken in. This is a process in which the horses are conditioned over and over again to accept somebody sitting on their back and being ridden on until they finally allow it. None of this has any resemblance to what horses would actually like to be doing in nature. Did Hill 16 love the sport when he was lying on the ground with a broken neck? Did he love the sport when he was taken to be euthanized? Can you imagine the fear, pain and suffering that this horse would have felt during his last few moments? Unlike the narrative that Sandy is trying to spin, horses don't love racing. It's what they've been conditioned and forced to do over and over again against their will. Sandy also mentions that this is what horses have been bred to do. But just because a human selectively breeds an animal for a specific purpose doesn't justify us to then exploit and abuse that animal. Using that same logic, we would also be able to justify dogfighting, because dogs have also been selectively bred for this purpose. What if we selectively bred a human into existence for the sole purpose of exploiting them, and then use the justification, oh, but it's what they've been bred for, so therefore it's acceptable? That would never stand. Just because we've selectively bred an animal into existence doesn't mean we therefore have the right to exploit them. Sandy then goes on to state that the BHA and the Jockey Club are continually in contact with the RSPCA and World Horse Welfare. Now, this is such a common narrative in all of the articles that I read about horse racing and about the Grand National. They often use these phrases like, "We are tirelessly working with, these organizations." And what they're trying to do here is they're trying to demonstrate how progressive and concerned they are with the welfare of horses. For example, in this article, it's mentioned that earlier this year there were changes to the number of times jockeys were allowed to whip horses. The new regulations reduced the number of times you were allowed to whip a horse from 8 to 7 in jump races and from 7 to 6 in flat races, which means horses are whipped one less time. Okay, whipping them one less time is better, but whipping a sentient being needlessly is always a bad thing to do and should never be acceptable. And this is a perfect example of this narrative at play. It's all about trying to do bad, abusive things in a better way. If these organizations were really concerned with animal welfare, then they would be out on the course with the animal rights activists calling for a ban to this archaic industry altogether. Horses are sentient individuals, not commodities, and when we selectively breed them at the expense of their health, and then force them to run in these highly dangerous races, and then euthanize them when they're inevitably injured, this is systematic animal abuse. There is no better or higher welfare way to abuse an animal. All abuse is abuse. The British Horse Racing Authority and Sandy himself are concerned with primarily keeping this sport and this industry popular, because without the popularity, they wouldn't make any money. So by using this narrative that they're continuously and tirelessly improving the welfare standards of the horses involved, what they're effectively doing is making people who watch and pay into the industry feel a little bit better about doing it. It's exactly the same as like a red tractor label in the supermarket when you buy meat and dairy products. It's a way of allowing consumers to ease their consciences in order to feel better about fundamentally paying for animal abuse. And this is the key point about horse racing. It is built upon profit and exploitation, and it makes a lot of people very rich. The people who are actually concerned with the welfare of these horses are the ones that are campaigning to end this industry once and for all. The people from Animal Rising who want to see an end to this archaic and barbaric sport, not to still abuse these animals, just in a better way. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to hear more from me, then subscribe and follow my Instagram, olivethevegan.